My name is Ann Faderly. I'm introducing this session, and I want to welcome you to one of the live IAJGS live sessions. So at the end, we will take questions, and if my Twitter account is working and there are questions, I will get those. I apologize in advance if my Twitter is not working and I don't get a Twitter question. I'm very pleased to introduce our session this morning. We have Randy Schoenberg and Adam Brown. I'm sorry, that was not in alphabetical order. And I'm not going to say anything more about them because I think you all know, and they will let you know as we're going along. I do want to remind you of a few things. One is that we're about ready to take off, so I hope your seat belts are tightly fastened and that your tray tables are in their upright and locked position. And, oh, just a second. Sorry. Hello? No, I can't talk now. I can't talk now. Oh, thank you. Okay. Oh, I was just getting a call reminding me to tell you to be sure to turn your telephones off. And now I will turn it over to Adam and Randy.
Thank you, Ann. My name is Adam Brown, and this is I was at the 12th IAJGS conference at the late and lamented Vista Hotel at the World Trade Center in New York in 1992. And so this is my 20th anniversary, although I haven't been to all of them. It seems I've been to the most fun ones, this one included. I guess an introduction of my genealogical past is warranted. I got started on genealogy, not knowing how to spell the word, at around the age of 7 when I sat with my beloved grandfather and with a yellow legal pad, of course, being the son of a wannabe lawyer. And I took down his family history. And that family history sat in a drawer for the next 35 years of my life, until my mother sold our house and she said, "There's something in a drawer here I think you want." And I began by adding his tree into Lotus 1, 2, 3. Anybody remember that? And I had no idea how to keep track of my data, so I called up a friend of mine who was a cancer researcher in Israel, and I said, "How do you keep track of your mice?" And she gave me this very complicated alphanumeric system that she used to keep track of her thousands of mice in her lab at Hadassah Hospital. And that was my system for the next 10 years. Then I moved on to the new genealogical platforms that many of you became familiar with. Ultimate Family Tree, may it rest in peace, and some others. And about 5 years ago, I read an article in my University of Chicago Alumni magazine about a fellow starting a collaborative project. And I became enthused by that because for the first time now I could go to a wedding, and when someone says, "Can I have a copy of the tree?" I can give them a URL and they can go look for themselves, which substantially is lessened my load as a genealogist. By profession, I'm a planner, strategic planner for businesses and nonprofits, although I seem to be doing it more as a nonprofit business for nonprofits than I do for anyone else. And I'm also a pilot, and so I like to look at things from the ground view and also from 30,000 feet. And as I've gotten older, I've found myself far more interested in 30,000 feet than the ground view. And I wanted to know what was going on in genealogy, so I went west. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second. I'm going to violate a lot of copyrights today, but as a nonprofit, I'm not making any money on this, so I feel that I'm allowed to do so. But if there is anyone who's offended by my use of their images or other copyright materials, I want to advise you I'm from New Jersey, and we have an alternate form of dispute resolution. And if you give me your name and address, they'll be in touch with you. 30 years ago, at a first event I came to like this, there was a founding generation of Jewish genealogists. You see traces of them here today. A small fraction of them are with us. One of them was named Malcolm Stern, who was, I regard as the godfather of Jewish genealogy because he brought to us the notion of sharing and collaboration. There was no such thing as history. He was working on a tree of the earliest Americans earliest Jewish Americans from Recife and what happened to them. He took a long view. He was looking at a 400-year view. And those founding genealogists, who were a very wise group, actively embraced the PC revolution when it arose. And they developed a technological platform that serves us brilliant in the 3 decades since. Those of you who are avid readers of Avoteno, I'm going to make a pitch here for Avoteno, very fine magazine. Over the past 3 decades, you'll notice that our Jewish genealogical community has made very important contributions to our field, not just the Jewish world, but the non-Jewish genealogical world as well. One of them is JewishGen, and specifically the Jewish Genealogical Family Finder. Now, the first time I saw the Jewish Genealogical Family Finder was at a meeting of the Jewish Genealogical Society of New York, and it was printed out on a dot matrix printer. Remember those? And it was on continuous paper, and it was about this thick. And I went to a JGS meeting, and they said, at the end, when the speaking is done, you may go back and look at the printout of the JGS, of the Jewish Genealogical Family Finder. So everyone sat there patiently. There's been 50 people in the room. Everyone sat there very patiently. And the fellow said, the speaking is now done, and you've never seen 50 people move faster in your entire lives. Beyond the Jewish Gen Family Finder, which then migrated to the web when that became available, Gary Mokotov and Randy Deitch invented the Deitch-Mokotov Soundex, which was a profound improvement over the National Archive Soundex, as it allowed us to get really down and dirty with the names and using a program that was actually very useful for working with European names. Of course, JewishGen, what a tremendous contribution that was, and actually informed programs all over the world. And I'm just giving you a little background here before I launch into the future. The JewishGen Online Worldwide Burial Registry, also a model throughout the entire world. The JRI Poland project. I think they announced this week they've reached 5 million Polish records, and they're doing a barter arrangement with the archives in Poland. Someone's here, they can speak on that during the comment period. But really an astounding accomplishment. Steve Morse's One Step. Any of you who ever tried to use the Ellis Island database back in the day knew how impossible it was to use. Steve Morse, being a true Jewish genealogist, didn't ask anybody's permission, and he developed his own platform for searching the database, and then they threatened to sue him, and then they somehow persuaded themselves this was absolutely the right thing to do. And now I don't think anybody uses that database other than via Steve Morse, so he's been actually a tremendous godsend to them. Since those 30 years, there have been developments of all kinds of databases. This one is, of course, the day this opened, I think there were servers, I think the internet in New York was slowed down to a crawl as everyone in the New York metropolitan area logged on, it seemed to me, to the Yad Vashem database. U.S. Holocaust Museum. Gen Team. This is a shout out for Gen Team. This is my favorite new. This wins the award for Best Rookie of the Year award, which is a phenomenal database for Viennese and Czech resources. AK Vote, another shout out for a small operation, which is the Dutch Genealogical Society, which is a phenomenal resource for anyone doing research in the Netherlands. Gen Ami in France, that's a long timer. And what's happened since then? So you've got these individual databases, such as I've just described you. So now you have aggregators, the people who take other people's data and aggregate them and put them in a form that we can use. Among these big boys is MyHeritage, which, as you know, is Israeli-owned, which had a period of acquisitions when they gobbled up small trees. Germany, Poland, there was a major acquisition run in the 2000s, and recently they purchased Jenny, which has 70 million active profiles, and they get, I think MyHeritage gets 2.8 million hits a month. Genie gets 1 million hits a month, so these are substantial sites. Here's Ancestry. I assume most of you are familiar with Ancestry. So to see what was going forward, so we've discussed what the present of the past is. I made I hate to use the word, pilgrimage to Salt Lake City to the second annual Roots Tech Conference, where this is the place where genealogy tech companies come to make announcements and to talk less about what's going on in the field. What I found at the conference was that the world was shifting under the feet under the big players in a way they only marginally anticipated. The first inkling of this change was the stunning report from the president of Ancestry that in the 3 months prior to the conference, more than 50% of their new enrollments was via iPads, Androids, and iPhones. So the age of the PC seems to be drawing to a close. I thought this was a youth thing till I came to this conference, and I found that there was absolutely no correlation between age and mobile usage. I found many of you were right on the scene, regardless of age. When my friend who's 85, who's celebrating his 88th birthday yesterday, whipped out his iPad to show me something, I said, "Oh, I think we're okay." The most exciting booth at the event, aside from ours, of course, was the Billion Graves site. Billion Graves is a collaborative project where people take out their cell phones, download an app, and then go to their local cemetery of interest and snap away. The iPhone knows where you are. It knows what cemetery you're in. And you snap away and you upload your photographs, and you can either add the information there, or you can go onto the web later in the day and transcribe your own information. Or if you're too lazy to go to a cemetery but you want to do something, you can you can go to someone else's cemetery and transcribe their data. So it is a very interesting thing, and it has been accepted by the Boy Scouts of America as an Eagle Scout project. So if you know a local Eagle Scout, send them to one of your cemeteries. The interesting thing about the conference was demographically it looked a lot like us. And it was I would say the participation was skewed towards the older crowd than the younger crowd. But any event that focused on mobile computing or had the terms collaboration, crowdsourcing, matching, metadata, or apps in its title drew an overwhelmingly youthful crowd. Perhaps recognizing this generational shift, the president of Family Search announced in his speech that they were inaugurating a collaborative website of their own, which is quite a shift. I mean, this is, if you think about what it's like to move the LDS, imagine what it's like moving their genealogical arm. This is a major event for them. The other player in the field is Jenny.com, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But one of the things I noticed was the change in language. You know, the first computing revolution, we talked about bytes, floppies, RAM, ROM. You remember those days? Reboot, blue screen of death for you who were... And then a generation later, we had new terms like web URL, Google, pop-ups, right? Virus protection. So given the revolution in mobile computing, exemplified by the enthusiasms of the next generation at Roots Tech, I thought I would talk with you folks about what the new vocabulary means. So what do I talk about collaboration? Well, the giant in the collaboration field is Wikipedia, which I think is the 6th most visited website in the world. And no one's making any money on it. And it's all volunteer. And they have, I think, 2,500 moderators who run the entire thing, who keep it honest. And that's really quite a substantial accomplishment. All donor-driven. What else do we mean by collaboration? Well, I happen to be prejudiced because I'm on this tree. But the Genie tree is a fully collaborative tree, meaning we're all in this together. It means that every single one of you, the question in the elevator, are you on my tree? I can answer that question. Every one of you is on my tree. Just haven't found out where you fit yet. So Jenny, using the Wikipedia model, has 125, what do we call ourselves? Curators. Who walk the tree like park rangers, climbing mountains, coming down mountains, making sure stragglers get home, making sure people are safe in their camps at night. Point being, we maintain the integrity of the tree and answer inquiries. It's a fascinating model, and it's very exciting for my collaborators. Actually, maybe I'll give a shout out to my collaborators. Randy Schoenberg, who is from Los Angeles, Pam Karp from Sydney. Who else is here from? Kevin Huntington in the back. It's Hattie. Hattie, where do you live?
Alexandria, Virginia.
You have to understand, when you're a collaborator on Genie, it doesn't matter where you live. Every morning I wake up, they could be across the street. One of the things that I've experienced is that Pam, who lives in Sydney, works on a Buchheimer project with me in Germany. And I wake up in the morning and she's moved the ball a couple of yards down the field, and then I move the ball a couple of yards down the field, and she finds out the next morning. So it's a fascinating experience. It doesn't really matter where any of us live anymore. It's like having a IAJGS conference 24/7, 365 days a year. And Malka, is Malka here? And Malka Meisel, who is from where? I can give you her email address and her URL. Oh, Newton. The basic concept of these collaborative trees is, again, this is our daily news feed I just described to you, is that there is a Facebook page, if you will, for every person on our tree. So here's Theodore Herzl's tree. Here's mine, with a picture of my father and I. And we're all linked together. The announcement by Family Search that it was moving into a new collaborative tree tells us that collaboration is here to stay. The next thing we discussed was crowdsourcing. Any of you know what the term crowdsourcing means? One, okay, then we have something we have to talk about. Well, Jewish Gen has been doing crowdsourcing for 30 years. We just didn't know what to call it. Crowdsourcing is the notion that many people working together commonly on one project can achieve far more than one person working on his own. We sort of have the idea with our SIGs and our birds of a feather groups, but it's not really the full idea. But they do understand that if you want to index the country of Poland with 5 million people, you need a lot of people. Many hands make light work. Billion Graves is another example of crowdsourcing. Family Search is probably the world leader in crowdsourcing. I want to show you how far we have to go. We've done 5 million records. Take a look at what the Mormons have done. 988 million records they have transcribed together. The Mormon The Mormons, of course, have a far greater interest in genealogy than the Jewish community does, but the size of our population, both in North America and worldwide, is exactly the same. We're about 12 million people worldwide, and both the Mormons and the Jewish community is about 6 million in North America. So it's a comparably sized population, but look what can be done. Another aspect of collaboration has to do with matching. This is the technology of the future. Up to now, if you were to draw a graph of ourselves and our research, each of us would be in the center of his tree, center of his workspace. It's Adam, Jewish Gen, Ake Vote, Gen Team, Ancestry, My Heritage, sourcing all of these sites and archives separately. Every time I make a major breakthrough and I find a new surname, I have to go back to all the sources all over again and search for that surname from scratch. I would almost cringe back in the day when that happened to me. Under a matching scheme, when I enter a new surname into my tree, if that surname is matched in the Genie situation or the MyHeritage situation by someone who has a tree, or there's a record available, I will be notified that a record for that person or another person researching that family is available. So now I've moved from being the center of this research experience to my family tree become the center of this research experience. It has vastly increased my ability to do work. But we've barely scratched the surface. None of the Jewish records that I'm aware of, or the Jewish archives or websites participate in any matching scheme. Not on Jewish Gen, not on Ancestry, not on MyHeritage, not on any site. It would be interesting, for example, if we had the capacity to link people within the Holocaust Museum tree. Right now we have individual records for individual people, but there's no context whatsoever. So how do we make these resources available so that matching them becomes second nature? This is how Ancestry matches. Any of you folks on Ancestry? A couple of you, I bet. You ever get the little leaf, and the leaf is their biggest marketing campaign. That woman and her leaf are driving me crazy. They're on TV 24/7. Anyway, that's my great-grandfather, Louis, and you can see all the matches in his tree. So on from matching. What is the next item in my agenda? Is metadata. Thank you. Actually, it's not. It's the data model. How do we share our information right now? Well, when I first started out, you would come to an IAJGS conference with your floppy disk. And your floppy disk contained a GEDCOM. And GEDCOM was relatively new then. I think it was started about 28 years ago. And it allowed us to exchange things between our standalone computers. The problem with GEDCOM is it hasn't been touched in 17 years. It's a closed source standard owned by the LDS. Closed source means there's absolutely no pressure from the community to change it, that they can resist, that they have to resist. And when you have a standard that doesn't change for 17 years, but technology is changing like crazy, it means that the individual providers make up their own extensions. And you now have a GEDCOM Tower of Babel, where each major provider, Ancestry, MyHeritage, whoever it is, has added their own extensions, and they don't talk to each other anymore. And they don't allow for the transfer of sourcing material. You can't put 2 or 3 sources in your GEDCOM and have it come through. You can't, it's very difficult to add media to your file and have it pass along. So it is a standard that begs for resolution. I think there's a lot to be done by us, and I'll get to that in a minute. API. Anybody know what an API is? Oh, good. I'm going to keep it simple, but an API is a means that a trusted source can get access to a database and take advantage of its materials. You all use an API without knowing it. If you go on Google and you look for a map through another source, so let's say you go to the Boston Park Plaza Hotel and you want to know where's the closest restaurant, and you go through the app, you're actually using an app developed by the web developer for the hotel to get into the Google system to get its maps. That's called an API. None of our sites are developed with robust APIs that a person can get access to mobilely with a mobile phone or an iPad, whether it's Jewish Gen, whether it's Vote, Gen Team. None of them have put themselves in a position where they can take advantage of the mobile revolution. One of the things about these mobile computers is they use 3G networks, which are slow. They have limited processing power. They have small screens. They're not set up for heavy-duty database searches like you and I have been used to in the past. We need to find a more efficient way to take advantage of their resources. Now I'm going to talk about metadata. This is how, when I was a boy, we used to keep track of what was on our media, which is simply to annotate either the back of the photograph or the slide itself. What most of you don't know is that every digital image that you take, whether it's a scan or a photograph, has a room within it for hidden information about what's in the photograph, where it was taken, when it was taken. This is enormously valuable material, as all of you know. Most of you may have noticed sometimes when you have an image, how did it know what camera I was using and what day it was? Well, it knows it because the camera imprints that on the photograph. So there was an article the other day about how do you preserve the information in your photograph? And there was a great article. The guy was very excited. You do use the file name. So you have a file, Adam Brown with Randy Schoenberg, August 2013, Boston, .jpg. Then you upload it to Facebook, Picasa, MyHeritage, whatever. And what does it become? XLRCBD234. All that data is gone. So the answer to that is metadata, because metadata resides within the digital image itself and travels with the photograph. This is the system that's been used by the journalism industry for over a decade. I went to a conference, the SatCon conference in New York last year, and I said they had, like, I think, 40 million photographs. NBC had 40 million photographs in its archives. I said, find me Ben Gurion, Independence Day, 1948. Bang, they typed it in. Up came Ben Gurion declaring Israel independence, 1948. It was impressive. One of the things, and I will talk about this in my recommendations, is that I think we need to develop a genealogical standard for metadata. You may think it's hard for you to do. Well, Adobe Bridge, which many of you have, has the capacity within it to modify metadata. And I think this is something we should talk about. One of the beauties of metadata is we could reach a point where we could have matching systems where people's trees could be matched up with photographs in our databases, in our archives. That would be a marvelous thing. You're doing a project on Ben Gurion's family, and you would, if we have archives, and I know we do have archives, the central, what is it, for the Archives of the History of Jewish People? They have enormous archives. Imagine having a tree with someone like, example, Ben Gurion, and having him, all his photographs pop up that you can select. This is the what an entry screen looks like for metadata. So that's this is specifically the page for describing the person who took the photograph. So what does the future hold? Those are the people we should be wearing around, right? Those are that's who we're doing trees for. Excuse me a minute here. Earlier on, we identified some of the genealogical innovations by which our Jewish genealogical fraternity blazed a path for the genealogical community worldwide. My assessment of the current state of Jewish genealogy suggests that today we're behind the curve. We've taken advantage of none of the technological developments of the last 20 years, made possible by the explosive growth of numerous technologies such as mobile computing. Our image libraries lack searchable metadata and are largely hidden from public view. I have lots of photographs. I have 10,000 photographs. How would you have access to them? Our websites lack published APIs and relationships with family tree aggregators such as Ancestry or MyHeritage that would enable the automated matching of data with online trees. Our databases are not open to the developers who, through the creation of mobile apps, are driving millions of young users to our commercial websites, but not our Jewish websites. Our trees are largely based on a long obsolete GEDCOM standard that does not integrate these modern usage. I'm going to tell you right now, if you want to attract children, young people, my experience has been they want to look into their great-grandfather's eyes. They want to see images. A GEDCOM that does not support images does not hook our children. And lastly, and most tragically for the future of our hobby, too many of our trees remain disconnected from one another for the simple reason that we old-timers cannot wrap our heads around the notion that our Facebook-friendly children fully grasp that genealogy in the future will be an entirely communal, collaborative, and crowdsourced experience, like every other experience our young people have today. We are at a pivotal moment, much like that when the World Wide Web suddenly became dominant during the late 1990s. Leaving firms without a web strategy, you can think of a couple of those, seriously disadvantaged. As Ancestry.com revealed at Roots Tech, our genealogical world is becoming centered on mobile computing far faster than we could possibly have imagined, and any resource that is not designed like ours, to take advantage of these developments risks becoming increasingly irrelevant. The next generation, reared on the instant gratification of the internet, and this is certainly the best example I can think of, will be disinclined to spend their hours conducting endless searches on an ever-increasing number of disconnected online genealogical databases. Every time a new database comes on, it's bittersweet for me. I'm happy to see it, and I have to think about how many hours I'm going to spend going through 200 or 300 surnames trying to see if there's anything there for me. We expect that future genealogical world will be dominated by mobile applications that aggregate genealogical data using algorithms to match information derived from multiple platforms and APIs. Today's internet aggregators, such as Ancestry, MyHeritage, or Family Search, could learn to manage these applications and platforms. Or they could wake up one morning and find that the genealogical field has been taken over by innovators such as Google. The market value of Ancestry is probably a rounding error to Google or Apple. If today's crop of aggregators wishes to survive, we think there's 4 things that a site is going to need to have. And I'll describe the 4 kinds of things that exist today. I think if you're going to want to be here 5 years from now, you're going to need to provide all 4. The first are what I would call proprietary databases. Those are databases that an aggregator owns, lock, stock, and barrel. And we know some of those. Ancestry has its own databases that it developed on its own. MyHeritage has taken advantage of databases that it has on its own. It's either purchased them or developed them themselves. The second are you need to have access to independently operated databases. If you want to have a matching scheme, how do you not have a matching scheme that matches with Yad Vashem, GenTeam, Akvote, the many other independent databases that exist today? You need to have standalone trees. There are folks who have a hard time wrapping their head around the idea of having an online tree that's shareable. And you need to have a fully collaborative, expert moderated tree. And that's the only one that exists right now is Genie. There's a collaborative tree that they're starting at Family Search. I don't see how they could possibly manage it without collaborators, without curators. So I'm proposing an action plan for the IAJGS. That we participate in the development of new open source data models to replace GEDCOM. Now, we come from a messianic tradition. And baying at the moon is part of our tradition as well. And we're small potatoes in the genealogical world these days. I think Ancestry gets 13 million hits a month. And our two biggest sites, commercial sites, MyHeritage and Genie, I think 3.8 million hits a month. But people do listen to us. We do hit above our weight, as they say in the boxing world. And I think it's very important that we take advantage of that for our own sake and to fulfill our mission as Jews. One, proprietary databases, independently operated databases, need to be brought together in a matching system. But I'll do this. And to do that, we need to do these, in my opinion, these 6 things. We need to create a new data model that allows us to share photographs and allows us to source our data. We need to help develop a new metadata model specifically geared towards genealogy. We need to, as a group, publish standardized APIs for all of our platforms so that all of our platforms can talk to one another. Not just people have to collaborate. Our institutions need to collaborate. They don't. You can't even do a global search in JewishGen of a surname Fuffelfnaffer. You got to go to the Ukrainians, you got to go to the Germans, you got to go to the Hungarians. It's silly. We need to encourage all Jewish genealogists to share their trees online. We are one people. And allow integration into online collaborative trees. If you don't want to manage the collaborative tree, I promise you there's someone in your family who does. We need to migrate all of our Jewish genealogy portals to mobile platforms. You want your kids to read Avoteno? Do you want them to read your local SIG journal? Get it in mobile. They'll read it on their tablets. And we need to develop best practices for the design and commercialization of databases. There are about 1 million unindexed Hungarian records that I have seen that on Family Search. If I took all the people, and there are Hungarian records, if we take all the people in the Jewish genealogical world who are available to index records, I figure it'll be about 10,000 years, as Aaron Lansky said the other day, before we get them all indexed. We need help. And the only way we really can do it is to commercialize it. And the only way we can really functionally commercialize it is if we establish a market for data. It costs about 5 to 10 cents to do a record in Asia. We need to find data entrepreneurs who will go to, I have family in Birobidzhan. Anyone know who Birobidzhan is? The Jewish colony established by Stalin outside Mongolia had 40,000 Jews. You want to have a rich story for your family tree? Find somebody in your family who went to Birobidzhan. But there is no index for that publicly available, but I'll bet you there's some guy named Sergei out in Birobidzhan who for a little inducement would do it. But the only way he's going to do it is if he knows that he's going to be able, he has an exit strategy for selling that data. And I'm not suggesting that we let him gorge us the way some people in Eastern Europe love to do. But I'm suggesting that we create a market for data with buyers, sellers, brokers, where we have a way that a person can take the initiative to create data indexes and know that there's going to be a place for it to go. So this is one of our proposals. So we really need to be like the leaders of 30 years ago. We've had a great run on our existing way of doing things. But if we want to interest our children, I think it's essential, given the ever-increasing number of resources we have available to us and the shift to mobile computing, that we move to an automated matching system, such as used by Ancestry and MyHeritage and Genie, to allow us to use our intellects as genealogists to sort through the data that's available to us. I'll give you an example. I was at the New York police last week. They needed to find a kid within 3 blocks of Wall Street wearing a red shirt. They had 200 cameras out on the street. They clicked in red shirt, 3 blocks of Wall Street between 11 and noon, and up came 10 images of a kid wearing a red shirt. So they're no longer doing it the old-fashioned way, which is running through hours of film to find the needle in a haystack. The needle came to them. And with a matching program such as I propose, linking together all of the databases that are relevant to us as Jews, I believe we can enter a new age and provide for the next 3 decades of Jewish genealogists the kind of support that the last generation of genealogists gave us. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Let's see if I can set this up and talk at the same time. I'm Randy Schoenberg. I am an attorney.
Yeah, get to it.
I'll do it. I got it. I'm an attorney, and from Los Angeles. I have been a genealogist like Adam since I was a little kid and spoke to my grandmother. Shortly before my 11th birthday, I pieced together 4 poster boards, and with me largely in the center, much to the consternation of my siblings, I built a big family tree, which I thought was big. It had 300 people on it. Raise your hand if you have a tree of more than 300 people. Okay. So, but I was 10, 11, and I continued. Over the years, people contacted us. I found new information. I added new things. I put together a tree of maybe several thousand people. I put it up on the internet. There was a man named David Solomon who had typed in the entire Neil Rosenstein unbroken chain, which I somehow connected to, so I added that using Reunion. Suddenly I had a 50,000 person tree. And then I was invited in 2008 to Chicago to the IAJGS to be the keynote speaker, and I stopped by a table in the exhibit hall and I picked up a card from one of the exhibitors from a small unknown to me company called Genie.com. And the card stood on my desk right there for several months. In February of 2009, I decided to give it a try. I had heard some chatter about these online trees, didn't want to necessarily keep doing it myself, and so I uploaded my file to Genie. Actually did it twice by accident. Unbeknownst to me, I'm sorry, this mic is going in and out. Unbeknownst to me, that was one of the largest uploads that Genie had received, especially in the Jewish world. And immediately, because Genie is a largely public tree that is searchable over the web, I would be contacted now by all sorts of people who have connections to this giant tree that Neil Rosenstein put together 10, 15 years earlier. And they were all building their tree on Genie. And they were all wanting to connect to this giant 50,000 person tree. And so sooner or later, this tree that I uploaded was also merged together because Genie allows merging. And it was merged into what they call the big tree. So let me step aside for a second and say, let's ask everybody. So you all have more than 300 people on your tree. Who has more than 1,000 people on your tree? Okay. Who has more than, keep your hands up, please. Sorry, it won't go too long. Who has more than 2,000? Who has more than 5,000? Who has more than 10,000? Okay. Who has 72 million people on their tree? Okay. Okay. So this is the new Big Bang in my experience, and Adam talked about getting a different perspective. This is something new. I've been explaining it to people coming by our booth all week. You know, when it rained today, they're little tiny drops, and then some form a puddle, they join together, and then there's a pond, and then maybe becomes a lake, right, and gets bigger. Well, that's the big tree on Genie. It sort of sucks up everybody into this giant tree, and it's now over 72 million profiles. There are 2.9 million users connected to this tree, taking part in it. They add 7 million new profiles a year to this tree, right? So now it's 72 million. When we come back next year, it'll probably be around 80 million. The next largest trees that exist now are at WeRelate and WikiTree. They're about 5 million or 2 million. As Adam mentioned, Family Search has started a collaborative tree, but they're just starting it. The Mormons are industrious, but I'm not sure that they're going to be able to catch Genie. And I think recognizing the value of this brand new phenomenon, this enormous collaborative tree, Genie was purchased by MyHeritage last year, at the end of last year. And now Genie, which before was really just a place to build your tree, now also has access to all the data that MyHeritage has. So again, not everything is free. You can start for free. But if you purchase a MyHeritage data plan, you can now access all the census data, all the billion graves, all of those things, and attach them to your tree. So it makes it more comparable to what previously existed on Ancestry and MyHeritage. Those sites allow you to build your tree, allow you to invite collaborators to your tree, but it's not enormous, right? It doesn't get beyond a few thousand because you're doing all the work yourself, basically. Only on Genie do you have this sort of merging, this worldwide merging together phenomenon. And for those of us who have discovered Genie and work on it, it's completely addictive. And because you find that, sure, we're all stopped in our research in many different branches, right? But if you go sideways a little bit and work on what we used to think of as someone else's tree, but right now it's connected to us, but someone else's tree, right? So I'll give you an example. Your grandfather had a brother who had a wife, right? She's your great aunt. Not a blood relation. Used to be, I would say, what do I care? I got enough to worry about with my blood relatives, right? What do I care about her? But she has a family. If she's important enough to be on the tree, on my tree, I should know about her. I should know who her parents are. I should know who her siblings are. I should know who their children are, because you know what? They probably have pictures of my grandfather because they're related to his brother. They were at the wedding, right? They have all of these things. They may know him. They may have stories. And once you realize that everybody on the tree has an importance and has his or her own immediate tree, then you just keep going, and you just go and go and go. So you find that you're interested in everybody. I've found that this, and Genie has a facility for this, has allowed me to look at genealogy in a completely different way. So previously, I would look at my tree, and it goes back to certain towns. They happen to be mostly in Bohemia and Moravia. And I would go onto JewishGen, and I'd enter in those towns and those surnames on the JewishGen Family Finder, right, just by blood relatives. And on the JewishGen Family Finder, you can search under a town. You can see other people researching certain surnames, right? We all have our surnames on our, right? But if you might not recognize that you have a close connection, because if one person's a Brown and the other person's a Schoenberg, you're not entering the surname of the two siblings who married each other, right? Let's say they had sisters and they both married someone named Schwartz, and you could be just a couple steps away and not really recognize it. On Genie, what they've done now is they've set up projects, and I wanted to attempt on this computer to go live and show you what Genie projects are and what we're doing in about 10 minutes. So if you bear with me, I'm going to try to do that. By the way, this is a beautiful quote from Thoreau. I thought since we're here in Boston, it would be really nice to look at. But it gives you an idea of why there's sort of been a resistance to this, right? We all have a very short time frame. Thoreau talked about it almost 200 years ago. we look back maybe 200 years, right? And that's about it, right? We think that's the horizon. And it's manageable. 200 years ago, we have 32 great-great-great-grandparents, something like that. That's a manageable number. If you go back another 200, 300 years, now you're talking about thousands of ancestors, right? And that's just too much for us to think about. We don't have the records for it, so we try to think small. But if we start thinking a little bit further back, new things happen. So let me get out of this now and show you what I mean, if I can. Hold your breath. Whoops, there we go. Okay. So Genie allows you to set up projects. Any user, free user, you don't have to pay. You can set up a project. You can call it anything, okay? Clowns of the Ringling Brothers Circus, okay? And you can identify everybody who's been a clown in Ringling Brothers. But what you can do is then link to that person's family tree. And on the person's profile, each person has a profile on Genie. That person can be linked to the project. So over time, there were a lot of Jewish-related projects. So I decided to set up an umbrella, a portal, to aggregate all of the Jewish projects on Genie so you could find them, right? And because everybody's working on their own little thing and not realizing how many projects there are. So I organized it a little bit like JewishGen's organized, and we have some thematic ones like the biblical tree. So they're people, they're curators who all they do is protect the integrity of the biblical tree and make sure people don't add spurious descendants of Abraham, okay, and things like that. I set up a project about the Holocaust. Let me show you what that looks like if this works. So I'm also the president and acting executive director of the Los Angeles Museum of the Holocaust. So this is something I'm very interested in. So I set up, a number of other curators and many collaborators have taken part, an index to all of these sub-projects on the various camps, ghettos, transit camps, etc. Okay? So if you go to one of them, let's see, you want to go to Auschwitz Project. You'll see there are 92 collaborators. That's over here. There are 5,000 people who have been added so far to the Auschwitz Project. These are all relatively new, and they're growing every day. Okay, so let's go back. I've organized these. There's Rabbinic, Sephardic, but mainly geographically, so North and South American. Adam mentioned First American Jewish Families by the famous Malcolm Stern, so Kevin Hunnit, who's over here, pretty much single-handedly entered in all of the families, from that book. So basically any name or family in Malcolm Stern's book, you can now find on Genie, and you can look at the family if you're interested in, I don't know, whatever, Bach? No, I won't even go there. I'll show you other families, but it's 600-something families, right? And the entire book's here now. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you connect to one of these families, if someone in your family marries someone who's connected to these families, you can find them using this directory. Okay. So let's keep going. So then for the geographic projects, you have Eastern Europe. The Belarusians have been very active. There are all these different projects about various families in various towns. The Galicians, not quite so active. Some areas, Latvia, Lithuania, have just the name of the sub-project here, Latvian Jews or Guide to Jewish Lithuania, where you have to go there and then find the town on that page. That's similarly what I've done, and I'll show you for the Jewish communities of Bohemia and Moravia, where you can click here, and you go to project. This is, anybody can do this. I'm going to build one in front of you so you can see how easy it is, but let me show you. So for all the towns in Moravia, there are 52 Jewish communities. We have a project, okay? And for each project, you can click on it. Here's an example from Koyatine. Not a big town, okay? But we have some information. There were, how many families? 78 families. And you can see about half of them are blue, so you can click on them. These are the Lerventals, which are my family. You go to someone on the family. This is my 5th grade uncle. I click on his tree, okay? And if it comes up, you'll see the tree. Now, what I've found doing this is that everybody in these towns is connected. There is not a small town like this where you cannot connect a person to any other person, because they lived there for hundreds of years. Now, our records go back to about 1780, so it gives us just a short time period between then and World War II to connect everybody. But you can be certain when a community started in 1500 or 1400, and you're coming in now, dropping in around 1800, that even if they have different surnames that they pick up in 1800, they are all cousins. They all have common ancestors, right? So do you think of these people as different families? No. If you're going back in that town, unless your ancestors just arrived there yesterday, you're related to everybody in that town by blood. And if you go further out, you can do the same thing in the whole community, right, with the neighboring towns, because the daughter here marries the son there, and there's suddenly a connection, and everybody descends from that connection. Okay, so how do you build a project like this for your town? You go, and again, this is free. It's like a wiki model. Genie has pay features, but this is not one of them. Okay? You go to the projects page, which you get to by going under research and projects. I'm going to try to walk you through this. It's going to take 5 minutes, and then I'm done. Okay? So you go to this projects page. Whoops. Come on. There we go. And you click on this green thing on the right here. I clicked on Start a New Project. And I'm going to make the project for Lemberg, which doesn't have Jewish families from, well, I'm going to call it Lviv. Okay, and I put in parentheses Lemberg or Lvov, right? And where is it now? Ukraine. Okay, and I'm going to give it a description, and I'm going to say this project seeks to collect, I can't type, collect all of the Jewish families from the town, it's more than a town actually, of Lemberg, or Lviv, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, we can edit it later. Okay, now in the Ukraine, okay, formerly Galicia. Okay, and you can see how challenged I am at typing, and it still works. And I click on Create Project, and it's creating the project. Okay, and it's done, and I could share this on Twitter if I knew how to do that. I could share it on Facebook, but I don't want to. And I click Done. Okay, and there's the project. Okay, it's a little bit empty right now. Right, I can add a related project. It's a little cumbersome because I am a member of so many projects that I get a list that's this long. So I'm going to link it to, if I can find the Jewish Genealogy portal, there it is. Okay. So it's now linked to the Jewish Genealogy portal. The portal is linked to this. But I want to find someone to attach to this project and find maybe some other collaborators. Okay, so how am I going to do that? I'm going to go up here and go to Google. Promise you this won't take too long. If I can type Google, I probably could just search right from the browser there, but I'll show you what it's like just going to Google. And I'm going to say Lviv, that's the current town name, and I'm going to say plus site genie.com. See what happens. Okay, so Chaim HaKohen Rappaport sounds Jewish, right? Rabbi of Slutsk and Lviv. So maybe he wants to be part of the Lviv project. So I click on him. He's number 2 there, right? And I go here, and ooh, Adam added him. See, he's managed by Adam and added by Adam. How do you know Rabbi Chaim HaKohen Rappaport? Who knows? You're a Rappaport. Okay, so we go add to project. Okay, and I go here and I type in Lemberg. Whoops, there it is, Lemberg, and I'm done. Okay, and he is now attached to this project. And you know, I know Adam's now interested in Krakow. Didn't know that before. I mean, in Lemberg, sorry, in Lemberg. So I'm going to click on Adam's name here. He's a collaborator of mine. And I'm going to go under Actions. I'm going to invite him to the project. Okay? And he's going to get a little message when he logs into Genie, which he does every 3 minutes. Okay? Okay? And it's going to say, do you want to join? And he'll say yes, because he always says yes. And he's going to be a collaborator on the Lemberg project. Okay? And I could invite other people in a similar fashion. I just go back to the list, right? And here's some other ones. This one looks Byla Rivka Austin, right? Not everybody from Lviv is going to be Jewish, but you got to use your brain, okay? So if her name is Byla Rivka, okay, it's probably Jewish, and I'm going to add her to the project. Okay, I'm going to go here and add her to the project. You know, you're limited by how fast your internet speed is. And I go to Lemberg, okay, and you can do this ad nauseum. Okay, let me finish this and show you then what it looks like when you're done. Okay, so here are the projects, and here is one for Krakow. Pam Karp is one of the curators. She took over this project. It was started in October, okay, so not 100 years ago. And it has, what does it have, 1,000 something families linked up? 14,500 profiles connected. It lists 1,000 different families, etc. You need to do this for your towns. You need to set up these projects. You need to invite people to join your projects. I went on to JewishGen and looked at JewishGen Family Finder. There are 1,600 people who are researching Lemberg. Okay? They need to collaborate and work together and use this technology to link their families together. You would be amazed at what it will end up looking like. Thank you very much. I want you to before I finish, the upcoming issue of Avotenu has a version of Adam's talk and my talk. And so if you don't subscribe to Avotenu, you probably should if you want to get some more information about this new phenomenon and this new Big Bang. Thank you very much for coming. Yes, we have time for questions. Line up, 10 minutes. Adam, you want to come up and
I agree with everything that my cousin Adam has said, both what I understand and what I do not understand. And by the way, I have a cousin who is married into a family from Genealogy. I'm a bit of a Neanderthal, so I still believe that the most important thing you have to do is to make sure that there are no errors in your database, whether it's your definitive database, such as my Brother's Keeper for DOS, or whether it's the websites, the charts, and so on. My experience with Genie has been limited, and besides that it makes my ADD kick in. I've gone there, I've seen things that people have done, I've gone back later, and what was wrong before is now wrong, but different wrong.
Okay.
Until you can solve that.
Okay. So the best way to make your tree accurate is to let the 3 million other users on Genie take a look at it and fix it. And I guarantee you, and if you want, you can come up, the Genie tree is more accurate than any other tree in almost every other instance. And it's just the way it works. It's the same reason, your argument is the same argument that people made against Wikipedia. It would never replace World Book. It would never replace Encyclopedia Britannica. I'm telling you, those two institutions are no longer printing anymore. Crowdsourcing is the way to gain the power of thousands of people in your research. And it's not for everybody. Not everybody plays well with others. Not everybody wants to deal with problems, and there are certainly problems. There's no doubt you're going to have errors in a tree. Excuse me, if you could be quiet for a second. In a tree of 72 million profiles, and by the way, Adam and I have each entered by hand about 50,000 of those. I have about 100,000 profiles that I manage. There is no doubt that there are numerous errors. I don't know how much data you've entered, but if you enter 100,000, if my error rate is just 1%, then there are 1,000 profiles with mistakes. The neat thing about Genie is that I have 3 million people looking for those mistakes. I get emails every day, messages on Genie every day correcting things in the tree. And my tree is 100 times more accurate now than it would be if it were sitting on my desk using only my eyes as a proofreader. So please let's let some other people ask questions.
Thank you very much. A really interesting discussion. And perhaps this is similar to what a lot of people are thinking. I worry that the future that you laid out is more dystopian than utopian when it comes to using algorithmic approaches to pattern matching, especially when you've got data where you have similar names and similar data and metadata of unknown provenance. When I look at the way you use metadata in other fields to try to do this, you see errors and the errors propagate, and you lose the academic rigor that the stodgy old library genealogy used to provide.
Well, my thrust is probably a little different than some of you. My cousin Israel Pickholtz and I, who have been collaborating for many years, only know we're cousins because our DNA matches. Okay? We have some common surnames. We don't know how we're related, but we know we're related because we have proof that we're related. Now, to me, our relationship is more important to me than our knowing exactly what day our common ancestor was born. I have numerous examples. My father-in-law, who went through the camps in Hungary, thought his entire family was killed. I put his tree on Genie, and the children of 5 of his first cousins in Sydney, Haifa, London, California, all put their trees on Genie. And one morning we all woke up and we all matched each other, and now we reassembled our trees. And far more important than reassembling our trees, we reassembled our family. And I would posit to you that reassembling our Jewish world is significantly more important than knowing whether someone was born in 1864 or 1865. So I would say, and I'm going to tell you, our children and our grandchildren will feel the exact same way. And I accept that there will be people who are very focused on whether he came over on the Campania or the Carpathia. But I would suggest to you that there are much bigger issues and much higher priorities for our Jewish community. That is reestablishing, using genealogy as a tool for reestablishing Klal Yisrael than there is worrying about every little detail. I will tell you that every day, I will tell you every day, I have a book of 20,000 people that was a very highly regarded work of scholarship, a family tree. And I added this family tree with 10 collaborators onto Genie, exactly as written. We found that 24 families had already entered their trees onto Genie. We merged them into our tree, and I would say we made perhaps 500 corrections to the book published, to the scholarly book in which it was based. I will also tell you that I'm the manager of a DNA project with 2,000 individuals in it, in which we've studied major dynasties in the Jewish community. And I can tell you that our DNA studies have entirely disproven almost every major rabbinic genealogy that we've run across. And only because I don't believe in changing people's traditions have I not made this publicly available. But I will tell you that most of our genealogies are approximations. And any notion that any of us have genealogies that are 100% accurate is a fiction. And we just do the best we can.
I don't see that there's any problem in having collaborative on the internet and still keeping our own proprietary family tree that we can put up online, publish, do whatever we want with. This is a way to find other members, as I was looking with you the other day.
Yes.
My concern about this is, and I guess I'm more confused about it, if I put up a relative of mine and someone else matches, because that relative is also on it. When I put it up, whose data, like if we have conflicting data with different sources, someone actually has a birth certificate, someone else is just using the SSDI, and I go on, is someone going to change what I'm calling my data? Can someone go on and change my birth date?
Okay, there are two kinds of conflicts that I've found, that I've run across. One is data that's just wrong. And that's easy to fix, and we fix it all the time. People Not everyone, not everyone is computer literate, I've discovered. So there are whole cultures in this world that haven't figured out how to use the caps lock key yet. And there's also more important, interesting things, which are actual conflicts of information. And I have found over the years, I mean, one of the things is when I got started in Ancestry, there would be, of any 10 trees of one family, 9 of them would be wrong. There'd be conflicts all over the place. And one of the things that makes Genie, really the beautiful thing about Genie is these conflicts are brought to the surface. And we deal with these conflicts. And we have a conversation about these conflicts. If there's one person said he was born in 1893, and another person says he was born in 1895, we post both pieces of data. Okay, that's a conversation worth having. If it's an irreconcilable conflict, like there's 2 Moishe Schoenbergs from Kiev with different parents, well, then we have a way of preserving that conflict because it's unresolved. So we love conflict. I mean, it creates conversation, because to me, the most important thing about genealogy are the conversations. So.
Are the sources actually listed on there? So
Yes, what I will typically do is do a print screen of my source and attach it as a photographic image right to the profile. And we put and if it's an irreconcilable difference between 2 people who can't work it out, the curators will come in and will lock that profile and will explain the problem. And we'll start a discussion group on Genie between the people where they can actually discuss these issues.
And follow up on sources, you said something about MyHeritage and their database. Now, in MyHeritage, you can attach a source to a person. If that person is listed on Genie, does the source travel?
If you are a Genie member, you can attach a source to that person. Thank you. Okay, we're going to remain behind to answer all questions, as long as we're done by 6. So, if you don't mind, they're required us to wrap up. Thank you all. This is the finest IAJGS conference I've ever been to, and I thank the organizers.
Good, thank you very much.
Hi, everyone.
Your proposal for machine by the powers that be.
Hi,
This is the first time I've raised it.